My dad stole my entire college fund from my brother's risky startup. He'll make us proud, he said. I didn't argue, I just left. Yesterday they called me crying after looking back, there were signs. Little ones. Things that didn't make sense unless you squinted and convinced yourself they did. Like the way my dad would always talk about my brother, Jason, like he was destined for greatness, even when Jason was flunking classes and bouncing between half-baked business ideas like a pinball. Or how, every time I mentioned college, my mom would smile a little too tightly, as if she was forcing herself to be proud. But I trusted them. I wanted to trust them. I believed every word they said when they told me, "Don't worry about the money, Evan. We've been saving for you since you were born." And I did my part too. I stayed out of trouble. I kept my grades up. I worked part-time at the grocery store after school. I didn't ask for much, just a chance. A future they promised me. It was supposed to be simple. I'd graduate high school, pack my bags, and head off to the university I'd dreamed of since I was a kid. But life, as it turns out, had other plans. Or maybe, my family did. The first real crack in the story didn't even come from them. It came from a letter. A polite, cold piece of paper from the university's financial office. One that arrived just 3 weeks before I was supposed to move into my dorm. The letter was thin. Just one sheet of paper. It should have been something boring, a confirmation, maybe a checklist of what to bring. Instead, it was a bomb. "Dear Evan Carter," it started. "We regret to inform you that your enrollment is currently incomplete due to missing tuition payments." I blinked at the words, rereading them 3-4 times. My hands started to sweat, crinkling the paper. It had to be a mistake. It had to be. My tuition was supposed to be covered. That's what the college fund was for. What my parents had promised every birthday, every parent-teacher conference, every time they patted me on the back and said, "Just keep working hard, Evan. We're proud of you." I sat on my bed for a long time, the paper resting on my knee like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Then I grabbed my phone and called my mom. Straight to voicemail. I tried Dad. Same thing. I didn't panic, not at first. They were probably just busy. Probably just. And then, like some part of me knew, I got up, went to the living room, and dug through the kitchen drawer. You know the one, every family has it. The junk drawer. Old receipts, expired coupons, mystery keys that don't unlock anything anymore. It took 20 minutes of digging before I found it. A folded bank statement shoved between an old cell phone manual and a dried-out pen. When I opened it, the blood drained from my face. The college fund, the account that had once held over $80,000, was empty. Not low. Not withdrawn for some emergency. Empty. Zero balance. Closed. And the closing date? 3 months ago. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might throw up. 3 months ago, right around the same time Jason had announced at dinner that he was starting his own business. Some revolutionary tech startup. No experience, no partners, just a vision and a dream. I sat there frozen, the pieces falling together faster than I could catch them. The way Dad had clapped Jason on the back that night. The way Mom had beamed. The way they had looked at me, not even a glance, as if I had simply stopped existing. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to be wrong. But deep down, I already knew. And when the front door opened an hour later, and my father walked in whistling like it was just another summer evening, I didn't say a word. I just stood there in the living room, holding the bank statement in my shaking hands, waiting. Waiting for him to notice. Waiting for him to tell me I was wrong. Waiting for him to explain. But he didn't. He barely looked up from his phone. Until I spoke. "Dad," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, too calm, too steady. He looked up, startled for just a second, then smiled that easy, careless smile he always used when he wanted to brush things under the rug. "Hey, sport. What's up?" I held up the paper between us like a weapon. "What happened to my college fund?" The smile faltered. Just for a fraction of a second. "You had to be looking for it, and I was." He set his phone down on the kitchen counter, leaning back against it casually, like we were talking about the weather. About that, he said, crossing his arms. We made a decision. We. Not I. A decision. My mouth went dry. What decision? He sighed, like he was the one who was disappointed. Look, Evan, sometimes, you gotta put your money where it matters most. Jason's got a real shot to make something of himself. Something big. Something we can all be proud of. I just stared at him. You, I said, barely a whisper. You took the money. The money you promised was mine. For college. He shrugged. We invested it. For the family. For the family? I almost laughed. I wanted to. I wanted to double over and scream and howl at the absurdity of it. But instead I just stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling my future disintegrate like ash in my hands. Jason's going to build something incredible, my dad said, his voice warming up now, almost excited. He's got drive, Evan. He's got ideas. You'll see. In a couple years, we'll all be living better because of this. I swallowed hard, my chest hollow. And me? I asked. What about me? He looked genuinely confused, as if I'd asked something irrelevant. You'll figure it out, he said with a casual shrug. You're smart. You're hardworking. You don't need a handout. Handout. That's what it was to him. Not a promise. Not a commitment. Not years of telling me, work hard, keep your grades up, we've got your back. A handout. And suddenly, I saw it all so clearly, like a fog lifting after years of pretending it wasn't there. Jason, the golden boy, who never finished anything he started. Jason, who blew through every dime they gave him, every chance they handed him on a silver platter. Jason, who didn't have to be responsible because he was special. And me, the backup plan. The worker bee. The one they never really saw, unless they needed something. I folded the paper neatly, tucked it into my pocket, and nodded once. Okay, I said. Dad's face lit up with relief, like that was the end of it. Like I was just going to nod and move on. Good talk, son. You'll see. Jason's going to make us all proud. Us. All. But I wasn't part of that. All. Not anymore. Maybe I never was. I turned and went upstairs without another word, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might crack my ribs. I packed a bag in silence. Just the essentials, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, the little bit of cash I had saved from my job. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't slam any doors. I just left. And when the front door clicked shut behind me, it felt like the final closing of a chapter that had been over for a long, long time. The first night I slept in my car. I didn't even have a real plan, just drove until the suburban sprawl gave way to cheap strip malls and dusty parking lots. I found an empty corner behind an old gas station, killed the engine, and sat there in the darkness. The air smelled like oil and asphalt. My clothes clung to my skin from the summer humidity. Somewhere in the distance, a train moaned, long and lonely. I leaned my head back against the seat and stared up at the cracked ceiling of my rusted-out Civic, realizing for the first time just how thin the line was between being okay and being completely, utterly alone. I could have called someone. Maybe an old friend. Maybe one of the teachers who had believed in me. But I didn't. Pride's a funny thing. It keeps you standing when your legs want to buckle. It keeps you silent when all you want is for someone to see you. I told myself it was temporary. A night, maybe two. Then I'd figure it out. I just needed time. By the end of the first week, I was crashing on a buddy's couch, a buddy generous enough to let me stay but too broke to offer much else. I split my days between applying for jobs and hustling for anything that paid under the table, loading docks, dishwashing, construction sites where no one asked too many questions. The first real job I landed was at a greasy burger joint called Patty's. Minimum wage, minimum respect, maximum sweat. I worked 12-hour shifts on my feet, flipping burgers, scrubbing toilets, hauling trash to the alley out back where the rats scurried if you stomped too loud. At night, I lay on that sagging couch with springs digging into my back, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. College? Dreams? All of that felt like it belonged to someone else now. Some other version of me who still believed in fairy tales about hard work and happy endings. I wanted to be angry at my parents, at Jason, at the world, and sometimes I was. But mostly, I just felt tired. Bone deep tired, the kind you can't sleep off. And still, every morning, I got up and kept going. Because what else was there to do? Give up? Let their choices define me forever? No. If there was going to be a future, it was going to be a future I built with my own 2 hands. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. Even if it meant starting at the very bottom, alone, bruised, and forgotten. It took months before I found something that wasn't soul-crushing. At first, it was just survival. Flipping burgers at Patty's, unloading trucks at dawn for the grocery store down the block, wiping tables at a diner that smelled like old coffee and regret. Every day blurred into the next, a heavy, endless loop of work, sleep, work, sleep. I lost weight. I lost friends, the ones who got tired of me saying, "I can't, I've got another shift." Sometimes, when I looked in the cracked mirror above the bathroom sink at the diner, I barely recognized myself. Eyes too hollow. Shoulders too tense. Smile long gone. But slowly, quietly, life started shifting. Not because someone handed me a chance. No, that never came. It shifted because I refused to quit. One day at Patty's, after a miserable double shift where the fryers broke and customers screamed over late orders, I was sweeping the floors when a man in a pressed button-down shirt waved me over. "You're a hard worker," he said, looking up from his coffee. "You ever think about doing something else?" At first, I thought he was joking. Or worse, mocking me. But he was serious. He owned a moving company, Henderson Hauling, small, local, mostly residential jobs. They needed someone who could lift heavy things without whining about it. He offered me $3 more an hour than Patty's and cash bonuses for weekend jobs. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what I had dreamed of. But it was a lifeline. I took it. The work was brutal. 12-hour days lugging couches up narrow stairwells, wrangling refrigerators through tiny door frames, unloading trucks in freezing rain. My hands blistered until the skin peeled away. My back ached so bad some nights I couldn't even sleep. But the first paycheck from Henderson Hauling made me feel something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I opened a new bank account. A different one, separate from anything my family had ever touched. And little by little, the numbers grew. I spent my nights watching free business lectures online, studying budgeting, learning everything I could about managing money. Not because I had much, but because I swore to myself. Never again. Never again would I trust anyone else to hold my future in their hands. By the end of the first year, I had saved enough to rent my own 1-bedroom apartment, tiny, ugly, with a water heater that groaned like a dying animal, but it was mine. I didn't tell my parents where I was. I didn't call them for holidays, or birthdays, or any of the big milestones. They didn't call me either. It was like we had both silently agreed. You made your choice. Now live with it. And honestly, most days I didn't even miss them. I had traded family dinners for silent meals eaten on a cracked kitchen counter, yes. But I had also traded betrayal for freedom. And freedom tasted a lot sweeter than bitterness ever could. I didn't get rich overnight. There were no lottery tickets. No secret inheritance. No lucky breaks. Just day after day of grinding it out while the world barely noticed I was even there. After a year with Henderson Hauling, I started picking up extra gigs. Furniture assembly, furniture repair, small handyman jobs. Word spread fast. It turns out, if you show up on time, work hard, and don't treat people like idiots, you stand out. I printed out a handful of business cards at the cheapest place I could find. Evan Carter, reliable. Affordable. Respectful. Not exactly flashy. But it was real. And it was mine. Soon, I wasn't just hauling couches. I was fixing cabinets, remodeling basements, flipping old junk houses that nobody else wanted. I scraped together loans, one tiny project at a time, and flipped my first sad little house into something that actually sold for a profit. It wasn't much, but it was more than anything anyone had ever given me. I reinvested every penny. I skipped vacations, skipped nights out, skipped anything that wasn't building the future I had to claw into existence. By the time I was 26, I wasn't just scraping by anymore. I was living. I bought a modest 2-bedroom house with a battered porch and a crooked mailbox. I paid for it cash. No debt. No co-signers. No begging anyone for help. I fixed it up myself, every floorboard, every nail, every ugly wall. It wasn't fancy. But it was clean. Safe. Mine. Freedom felt like sitting on that crooked porch in the evenings, beer in hand, knowing no one could take it away from me. Not my father. Not Jason. Not anyone. I had built something out of the ashes they left me. And honestly, I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they were gone, just ghosts in a part of my life I didn't visit anymore. I was wrong. Because ghosts, as it turns out, know when you're doing better than them. They can smell success like blood in the water. It started with a block number flashing on my phone screen late one night. I let it ring out. Then another call the next night. And another. I ignored them all. I wasn't curious. I wasn't nostalgic. I was done. But the universe, or fate, or whatever cruel thing controls these moments, wasn't finished with me. Because one night, as I pulled into my driveway, headlights were already waiting for me. And standing on my battered front porch, huddled together like survivors from a shipwreck, were the very people who had burned me alive years ago. My parents. And Jason. Looking like they'd been through hell. I didn't get out of the truck right away. I sat there, engine idling, headlights painting them in harsh, cold light. My mother's eyes were swollen and red, mascara streaked down her face. My father stood stiff and awkward, wringing his hands like he wasn't sure whether to shout or beg. And Jason looked broken. Shoulders hunched, hoodie pulled up like it could hide the ruin clinging to him. For a second, just a second, the old reflex kicked in. The part of me that still saw them as family. The part that still thought maybe, if I just tried hard enough, they'd finally love me the way I'd always wanted them to. But it passed. I killed the engine, grabbed my work bag, and got out of the truck without a word. My mother took a step forward immediately. "Evan, please." I walked past her. Keys in the door. Deadbolt turning. "Evan, wait!" The door opened and I stepped inside. I didn't invite them in. I thought maybe that would be enough. Maybe they'd take the hint. Maybe they'd walk away the same way they had years ago, without a backward glance. But they didn't. The door frame shuddered as my father knocked, harder this time. I stood there, facing the quiet kitchen, the cheap table where I'd eaten 1,000 solitary dinners. I didn't turn around. Another knock. Then my mother's voice, breaking. "Please, Evan, we have nowhere else to go." The words hung there, heavy and clumsy in the air. I could hear Jason too, a low, choked sound like he was trying not to cry. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I let the silence answer them. After a long minute, I heard my father speak. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It cracked around the edges, hollow and raw. "Jason's business failed," he said, almost whispering. We lost everything. The house. The cars. The retirement fund. Everything. No pride left. No anger. Just ruin." He took a shaky breath. "We're staying in a motel. Living off credit cards that are already maxed out. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to go." The motel. The golden child, the pride of the family, sleeping on stained mattresses and microwaving dollar store meals. I almost smiled. Not because I was happy they were suffering, but because it was proof. Proof that the pedestal they had built for Jason had never been real. It was just a tower of cards, held together by hope and denial. And now it had all come crashing down. Another knock. Softer this time. Then my mother's voice again, trembling. "Evan, we made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But you're our son. You're still family. Please, please help us. Still family. Now, when everything else had been stripped away. When they needed something. When there was nothing left to take from Jason. Now they remembered I existed. I finally turned around. Opened the door. Stared at them, all three huddled together, pathetic and ruined, the way they had once left me. I looked my father in the eye. Then my mother. Then Jason. And I said very quietly, "You chose your future then." A beat of silence. "Now live with it." And then, without another word, I closed the door. And locked it. For good. I stood there for a long time after the door clicked shut. Listening. Hearing nothing but the sound of the night settling back into place. No more knocks. No pleading voices. Just silence. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It didn't feel cold. It felt peaceful. They didn't knock again. They didn't shout through the door or beg or make promises they couldn't keep. Maybe they understood. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. I walked back to the kitchen, pulled out a chair, and sat down. No trembling hands. No pounding heart. Just me. Alive. Whole. Free. They had chosen Jason. They had gambled everything on him. And when the dream cracked and crumbled, they turned around and realized the bridge they had burned behind them was gone. I didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hate would have meant they still had a hold on me. No, what I felt was simpler. Indifference. The kind of peace that comes when you realize you don't owe anyone anything. Especially not the ones who chose to leave you behind first. The days after that were quiet. No more blocked calls. No surprise visits. Just a steady silence that stretched longer and longer until it became normal. Sometimes I caught myself wondering where they went, if they were still scraping by somewhere, trying to patch together the ruins of their old life. But I never picked up the phone. Never reached out. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was survival. Because some bridges need to burn. Some doors need to stay locked. Not because you're angry. But because you finally learned you deserve better. Looking back now, I realize that losing everything I thought I needed was the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned that blood isn't thicker than respect. That loyalty means nothing without love behind it. And that sometimes, the people who raise you aren't the ones who really see you. I built a life without them. A life they thought I could never have without their permission.